That was an interesting story. Something that happened during recording was we recorded the piece, and then me and Mark were listening back to it. And then when we got to the ending, and I told him that last note, that it's a high E, that you're supposed to hold really quiet for a really long time. And on the recording, it came out just beautifully. And I was listening to it, and I told him, this is the epitome of all I've done. All my 25 years of playing is in that high E. And I'm sure you guys know what I mean. It's a lot of long tones, a lot of dynamics, a lot of holding, a lot of... And he was fascinated because he thought, you know, there are other passages, there's some really fast stuff. And then I was on that E. I was like just so fascinated with myself.
Well, it's impressive to me because she can obviously do both, but it's an incentive for anyone, you know, learning or listening, because a lot of times we are impressed by speed or technique to a high degree. And so I was actually complimenting her on how beautiful the very fast pieces were. There's some incredibly fast flute work in particular, and she told me that that's really great, but the one that really means the most is this long whole note. And not being a flute player, I was really impressed with that. That it was this is the really big thing for her, was that last note of that piece. So.
To me, that improvisation has opened so many doors. It's a whole new world. It's a world of possibilities. You could have one chord, a major 7 chord, and there's tons of things you can do with it. You can build a whole piece over this one chord. So that's what attracted me to improvisation in the first place. All the rhythm possibilities. Also, just to be able to create. I've had so many times people say, oh, you play flute, play something. And I'm like, okay, let me go get my music. And I just wanted to be able to, you know, play something from my heart. It's a very joyful process. It's a lot of learning, but we all know that we have to practice a lot. So it's just a lot of practice still in a different way, more. I'm practicing right now to be able to have a lot of different sounds under my fingers, so when I create, they just come out. So it's a different type of practice. I would love to talk to you about that if you guys are interested. Honestly, this is what I heard a musician say at an interview. We think we learn from people, we have idols, but we mostly learn from the people we play with. So find really good people to play with. Mark is such a great, just great pianist. I wanted to tell you guys that the melody of Gentle Breeze is the same twice, but you notice that he played completely different the second time. So it's, and if we play a third time, it will be different again. It's just magic colors coming from the piano.
I think we actually said that in the book. The books are available today for anyone interested, and you can buy scores on her website or mine if you're interested in playing the music. But we actually mentioned that with this one and another piece that it's not really possible to play it the same way twice. So this is a sketch, basically. So we put just a little bit of a sketch there. It doesn't even take up that much paper. But it encourages people to maybe try to create something of their own after they've played that written melody. And that you can do it. I think that's the answer to what you said. I think sometimes it's just a matter of stepping out and saying, I want to do this, I'm going to. And again, not worrying about what people say, because you can tell if you need practice or not. You know, if you need more chops or more technique on a particular thing, you know that. But whether you're playing right or not, Yana hit the nail on the head that it's not always about jazz, it's about the ability to express yourself. So she does that well.
Thank you. It's also a great, some of these pieces are a great opportunity to collaborate with someone from the jazz department. Just throwing that out there. I think we need more of that. Okay, so the next piece we're going to play for you is, it's a very important piece for me. It's a piece I grew a lot with. I had a lot of fear about it. It's called The Emperor's Delight. And when we started, the first time Mark introduced it to me, he said, okay, so let's start with this and then we'll see how it goes. And then I was asking questions about, are we going to repeat any of it? Where are we going to go? How are we going to start? How are we going to end? And he was just leaving it very open, which you can imagine is very scary for a classical musician. And in my head, I was thinking, okay, that is going to happen now because these are the beginning stages. But that ended up being every time that we played this piece. We never knew how we're going to start, how we're going to end, and what's going to happen in the middle. So the recording on the album is unique, and the recording you're going to hear today will be, or the performance will be unique also. It's, do we need to say anything about the form?
No, it's actually a very simple piece. That was the point. I wanted something that was more in a folk nature, but something fun, because it's really about that in the particular piece and the idea of the album, which we won't go into today because we're talking about the playing end of it. But it's very simple. You know, 1 chord, 4 chord, then a little bit of a minor thing in the middle, all key related, very diatonic. But like Yana said, it was. I didn't really give anything except a written melody. You'll recognize as we get there, you know, certain things that have almost like an Asian feel to it, but at the same time it has an American folk feel. And I tried to combine both of those in a very simple way. But but I love the attitude that Yana had, because even the day of the recording, she said, this piece is scaring me to death. And we went in the studio, and I literally looked at her through the glass booth, and I said, are you ready? And she said, yes. And I just started playing. And so it came out to be about 6 minutes of just creation and improv on this little theme. But it's everyone that's heard it has been shocked that it was improvised through a large portion of it. So that, I like to put that in on occasion when I get to talk to people, because it sounds like it's really completely composed, and we've never played it the same way again. I'm sure it won't be the same way today. So we'll do a short version of it, I'm sure. But key in on Yana's ability to listen, and mine hopefully, where we listen to each other and we're really sensitive to it in the sense of a conversation. We're trying to make sure that we're both playing with each other, not at each other.
Okay. Next, I wanted to tell you guys a few words about working with a composer. I have had the pleasure and the honor of working with many composers in my life, and it's very often you see what's on the page, or they tell you they want exactly this and this. It was amazing to me to work with Mark as a composer, because he gives a lot of freedom to the musicians. And I wanted to show you a little bit of this piece called Death Submits to illustrate that. There's an intro to the piece that is exactly the same as the melody that comes on a little bit later. And there's no dynamics, no articulation, nothing. And at the recording studio, I asked Mark, so how would you like this? And he said, well, how would you play it? And so I said, well, I could do this, and I could do this, and I could play it more straight, or I can take more freedom. And so we tried a few different things, and he listened. And at the end, he just said, you know, whichever one feels right to you, this is what you should play, because it's you coming through the music. And he said, I want you coming through the music. So I wanted to say that I really appreciate that, and I hope you get to work with composers like that. It's great to have the freedom to just show you and not just have to do whatever they intended. So I wanted to play the melody for you first with Mark, and then after that I will play for you what came out of the intro, or how the intro happened. this is the main melody, and then this is the intro, the way I really felt it, and he liked it, and we put it on the album. So very open, a lot of space, and he liked it. But again, there's the way this is in the music, and you can, by the way, we didn't mention, you can get different separate pieces. You don't have to get the whole book for the album. If you like one piece, you can just buy one piece from the website. There's no articulations, there's no dynamics. So the way I did it, it will be up to you to create your own intro.
That's a different type of improvisation, actually, isn't it? So there's a written melody, but then you're left to, that kind of goes back to your original question about how do you improvise, and the security of who you are, and knowing who you are. That's going to be as much your battle as how much time you practice to do things like that. So you don't want to be second guessing yourself. So it's good to be with composers who tell you what to do, because you get better that way. But when somebody comes along who says they want you, that can be very scary, can be very demanding, because a lot of times you're like, whoa, maybe I'm not good enough. And that's a question that we all ask, but it's actually not really a legitimate question, in my opinion, or the composer wouldn't have asked for that from the player. So knowing what she could do, that's how we ended up getting to that place, where it's a matter of just personal, how would you play it? So one of the ways you can get there is taking music you love and playing it your way, and interpreting it your way, and then and deciding, yeah, that is how I would like that to sound. So you're ready for that time when someone says, just be you, and put that on there. Did somebody have their hand up? Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is how, as classical musicians, this is how we start improvising. Is maybe on a solo piece, or an etude that no one is going to say anything, and you can do more rubato than it's written, and that's how we start. And then you want to take more freedom. It's never enough. I really like Chet Baker. Mark Christopher Brandt. He has, no, seriously guys, this is his first, or our first album. I would say that in his website is listed as classical, but he has 10 or 11 CDs that are all listed under jazz. So you should look him up. There's some amazing stuff, a lot to learn from. Of course, I've learned a lot from, I play with a guitarist, if you don't know, Christian Perez. I've learned a lot from him. Famous, I listened to a lot of Miles Davis. I know I like more. I never expected that question. I'm sorry. It's fascinating.
It's a good question.
It is a great, yes. It's something I should be prepared. I will think about it,
no
and
problem.
I will. Mark, you go now.
Well, the list is very long because I'm influenced by a lot of people, but I think what I want to say most important, which might interest you, is rather than necessarily tell you who you should listen to, what I do with musicians, artists of any genre. So if I like their music and it speaks to me, or I really enjoy it for any reason, I actually look up that person and start reading about their life and try to understand who they are. And that's an important way to go, I think, because there's a lot of musicians that I really like and really respect, but as I read about their life, I found that I respected them even more, maybe because of things they think or things they've overcome, you find a really beautiful core of similarities, and artists are, and I'm really speaking of instrumental artists, it's because you can find the obscurity there in the personalities. They're very, eccentric. They're out to lunch, and they're thought that when they're in their particular time period, or a lot of times people will say things about them that way. But when you find out why they do things, or who they are, or what kind of life they have, their private life, even with all the problems in it, it helps you make sense of who you are, because artists are not the same. We've talked a lot about that, and I tell that to everyone where I did go, and all of my students. You're a different person. You're not the same as any other person, and there's no way around that. And anyone who's not an artist would say that we're being elitist. But it's a very small group of people who are artists, but you think differently, you see things differently. You can go to the coffee shop with your friends and get along with them and enjoy everything they're talking about. But if you try to bring up something that means something to you, they're all going to be like, oh yeah, that's cool. Okay, I got to go. And it happens that way. You're called to be the medium that brings what the world needs. So you have to think about that. That's my suggestion. There's just any jazz artist who's, the first one that got me really was Oscar Peterson. And I ended up with Chick Corea, and I really liked him because he was composing for strings and orchestral things. That led me to Herbie Hancock, who was actually doing the same things in the 70s when I was coming up. But I will say something like she said too fast is that the local musicians who played who were really good. Every time I went to a club, I always went with a question. And I would ask the question, and they would always answer them, and I always got such great information from really great local musicians, and many of them teach here. So just go up and ask a question and see what their answer is, and that might help you immensely. But stay away from people who tell you have to listen to this or that artist in order to be good, because that's not true. I listen to absolutely everyone, and into the pop culture as well, because we need it all. We have to be affected by everything. You have to be disciplined and practice. That's the end of it. That goes with what I said at the beginning. Tell people to get out of your way. That's assuming that you're on the path. For me, being on the path. If you're practicing, you're on the path. That's the only way you'll know. Because if someone says, hey, well, Mark, what do you do? I'm an artist. Well, how do I know that? I don't have your music. And the only way I know is that I practiced, and I've worked, and I improved today. If I wasn't here with Yana right now, she knows I would be practicing at home. That's what we do in between, performances and in between writing pieces. Is you have to have that discipline. That's the path, really.
We talk a lot about looking people up. Look up your composer, read about them. I don't think it happens most of the time, but it's like you said, knowing something about people's lives will totally change how you interpret it. So the old classical dead guys were still interesting guys and gals.
Yeah.
You got to go find out. You know what I mean? We think of them as just, we don't have to know.
Oh,
We don't think of them as people. Look at their picture and imagine them going out during the day.
Right. If you find out how they lived and what they did, it makes it more interesting, and it makes you want to try to understand what they were saying. And remember, they were up against the same things that you're up against. When you play, people told them they were crazy. People told them, we don't want your music. Well, we don't want it. Well, we already have that. We don't need that. So they've heard all of that too, and they made it. So it's a good thing to check out who they are.
Yeah, and nowadays you have unlimited resources. Like there are audiobooks if you don't have time to read. There's YouTube. There's a whole movie about James Galway on YouTube. It's like a 1 hour long movie.
It's a great,
and so there's no excuse of, oh, I can't go to the library or something. I've been thinking about this. I meet people and they say, oh, do you know this flute player? Do you know this flute player? Honestly, I don't listen to many flute players. I listen to a lot of piano players. I listen to a lot of guitar players. I listen to sax lately, singers. I listen to a lot of world music, a lot of folk, so a lot of singing there. I've listened to a lot of flute in my life, and I still have to tell you that if you mean breaking the boundaries towards the improvisation, I still hear that in Emmanuel Payou, you know. I hear in his playing, and you can never tell this is something he's reading, right? It's so imaginative, so full of creativity. And other players, I've always looked up to players who you can, from the first note they play, you can see their soul. They're telling you a story. And so I heard Marianne Gadigian, who teaches at Austin. She just blew my mind. And Denis Boyrakov, who was the Metropolitan Opera. And now he's in Los Angeles, I think. Yeah, so, you know, even the classical guys. Flute, there is an amazing flute player who did a crossover, so he does classical and jazz. Hubert Laws, he's still alive. And his music is great. It was great for me. In the beginning, I was having a hard time listening to straight ahead jazz, honestly. And then I listened to Hubert Laws, and I was like, okay, so I hear some of my sound in there, so that means I'm not crazy. So he's a great someone to start with.
I've been teaching privately and done master classes. We've done things separately, but this is our first one together. Yeah, yeah. But if anybody's interested in private lessons or one lesson, hour lesson, you can always get in touch with me too. It's usually turns into a 3-hour lesson, and I don't charge for the last 2 hours because it's just really fun. So.
It's great though. It's like you can get career choice, like talk about your career, what to do if you don't know what to do, improvisation, jazz, whatever, life.
It's fun.
It's great.
Well, that's why I think we're here really as artists. At my level, is more to help everybody get where they need to be, or help them inspire people to keep going, because you can do it. Whatever you're thinking of doing, you know, just be good at what you do, because the style is going to change. What people like is going to change, but quality playing is always going to be in demand. It just is. So things are different in many ways, but the quality playing is still, you know, I'm looking for great musicians to record my music. So there she is, you know, so you want to be that no matter what your personal style is. You want to be good at what you do, because good playing will always be, you know, marketable and hireable for sure. We're the poster children for that, I'm sure. Yeah, I really like saying that so people won't give up. You can do it.